Oh yeah, I mean, I've always been the person where if I'm going to invest in something, I want it to be, primo, excellent, flawless the first time through, and that's really not a good way to approach life and leadership.
We get it. You're busy. You want to grow, and we want to help. You're passionate about your craft because it deeply matters to you. Your faith is important. It's your foundation. At Stay Forth, we coach leaders to avoid burnout, live and lead with clarity, purpose, and from a place of health. We want you to experience long-term impact. Welcome to the journey.
Welcome back to week 4 of our summer series in the Stay Forth Leadership Podcast, where we're diving in to anti-burnout, a lighter way to live and lead in a heavy world. Alan, these are going by quick, but we're hitting 4 today. We've got several more great ones. Before we start, what's been something that you've been most encouraged by so far in this series?
I've loved hearing from listeners that space piece is not a normal piece of a podcast, and that's something we do this every summer, and we do a very different type of podcast series each summer. So if you've been listening for a while, you know that we love information, good information out there, but that it only has so much power. So Jonathan, I think I love to hear when people really understand, yes, they're a coaching organization, and that's some of the best stuff that we do. So if this is the first episode you're tuning into, please go back and listen to the others. Actually, they're not in order. So it doesn't matter when and how you listen to them, but please just listen to them because we believe that it has huge power to change. And actually been doing a video series as well on social media right now this week about these obstacles and these opportunities. For me, it's fun to know that somebody's going to push through one of these obstacles, and then on the other side of it, they're going to find a new opportunity when they were ready to quit. And my thought is always this: you may not be doing something wrong. You may just not be there yet. Like, you haven't pushed through the wall yet. You haven't gotten over that false peak yet. Whatever analogy we want to use, like, life and leadership are really challenging, and today's episode, I think, is really, really timely for where we're at in our world.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think it's easy to feel like we're either doing something right or we're doing something wrong. And just because something is off or feels like not enough, or there needs to be little shifts that you can make, doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something wrong. It just means you're not firing on all cylinders, so to speak. Shameless plug. I love the space that we have in here. And this is the first year we've done a video version of the series over on our YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed to that, click anywhere right in here. You'll see it, and you can go back and watch the other episodes. There's some added extra nuggets of value in the spaces between the questions. So I would highly encourage you to check those out. You can watch them with your team. Again, we're filming them in order, but you don't have to watch them in any order. They're designed to help you with whatever specific thing you want to push into. So week 4, Alan, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about change. I don't know any topic that over the last 5 years is more relevant to any of us, just as humans, but especially as leaders. Let me frame our moment for you. The economy is really challenging right now. Businesses, unfortunately, are closing, and I think are going to continue to close in this next year. There's a lot of fear right now with the election approaching, and anytime there's change, it's always going to be accompanied by fear. And so I actually think that this is a great moment for us to be talking about this topic, because change does all kinds of things to us that we don't even know that it's doing underneath the surface. And I'm glad to share some of the things from my own life that I just did not know I was experiencing. And often we're not running from them. We just don't know how hard it is actually in the internal things we need to deal with. So that's really our focus today. And we want to push people not just to think about the change, but to push past it for something beautiful. And so as we do, I want to read a phrase and then talk about why this thing is so helpful. So on the other side of change, there's this beautiful thing called an experiment. Now, science experiments, not my favorite as a dad. They certainly were my favorite as a kid, but I love experiments, and we do these a lot here at Stay Forth. And I believe...
You mean you didn't like making the exploding volcano with baking soda and whatnot?
That was always the coolest kid in the class that did that one. Mine was always lame. Like, even if I got a ribbon for it or I was in the top 10 or whatever, I was like, this was not worth all the work. And now as a parent, it's actually more work. So we're not talking about science experiments. We're talking about little things that you can do to sort of test out the future. So let me read this phrase: experiments test the future without pressurizing it. Experiments test the future without pressurizing it. When we're in a state of high change, it feels like there's so much pressure. It feels like we have to hit it right. We have to nail it. And we talk about this a lot, rough drafts at Stay Forth. And actually, we have 5-version process, the V1 to V5, before anything goes live, especially one of our coaching tools. And that's been really helpful for me because I feel like, I don't know about you, Jonathan, I want to nail it. I want to get an A+ the first time right out of the gates. And it turns out that's not really possible.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've always been the person where if I'm going to invest in something, I want it to be, primo, excellent, flawless the first time through. And that's really not a good way to approach life and leadership.
And there's kind of 2 different types of changes here. We'll just simplify and put them in 2 different buckets. One of them, I would say, is a macro change, something big going on in the world or in your life. And this could be like a job change, or you're having a baby, or even in our political setting right now, like somebody is going to take office here in the future. And these are huge changes. You see them coming generally. And then there are these other things called micro changes. And so while we're looking for the macro changes and we're so focused on them, the micro changes we tend to not see. And this could be somebody going off staff. This could be a new change or season. For me, starting the school year is one of those micro changes that I have to pay attention to that actually brings something that I'd rather not talk about, but we need to talk about here, which is pain. And here's the phrase with change: above the surface of the change, there's freshness. And below the surface, there's pain. There's freshness, there's excitement. I act way more excited about things than I really am deep down. And there's a level of excitement. If we are moving on to a new phase or a new season, even within our work at Stay Forth, that means that we're going to have to leave some things behind. Leaders, we are notorious for believing that this change is going to be all good. We'll even say that phrase, oh, it's all good. No, it's not. It's good and it's hard. It's exciting and it's painful below the surface of that. Often when a coaching client finishes, Jonathan, I'll feel this like, oh man, like I'm so excited for where they're heading and we've made so much progress. But it's sad because I really loved diving in with their life and leadership every 2 weeks. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be moving on from something. It just means that there's some pain below the surface that we really need to pay attention to. But here's what's helpful with an experiment is that you get to test the future without pressurizing it. You get to take a step. You get to get moving, get unstuck. But also you get to just say, you know what, let's give it a shot. Let's try a pilot or an experiment here. So if you are leading a team, I want to encourage you in times of high change to do small experiments. The bigger the change, the smaller the experiment that could actually take the edge off. Experiments are powerful. Let me give you some reasons why. They limit the pressure and they increase our curiosity. They open our mind to new possibilities. They give us data to innovate and make future decisions. They free us and our team to make mistakes. Yes, I said make mistakes. They put us in learning mode and heighten our senses. They move us toward the future when we're stuck. They help us stumble on new ideas. And I love that idea that we may stumble on our best idea. Jonathan, we've had some good ones over the years. We've had some really good ideas. Frankly, not all of them have even launched, and we shouldn't have launched them. And they weren't great ideas, or they weren't timely ideas. Even our summer podcast series is one of those, let's give it a shot. Let's test it. I think this is going to be helpful. Turns out we've broken into something that we think is really helpful for you as you are on a road trip, as you're outside walking, or as you're on your mountain bike today, and we continue doing it. But we didn't start with, this is going to unlock something, and for the next 5 years, we're going to do this. No, that's too big of a deal. And so really within some of that pain below the surface, before we even get there, we want to acknowledge the pain. So we're going to go back and do some reflection questions here on both of these. And we just realize, friend, that you are dealing with a lot. I tell leaders this a lot. You are carrying way more than you think. And that's kind of where we want to pause as we move you into our first question today. So, Jonathan, what are we going to have them reflect on?
Yeah, something has to change. You can't try something new until you know where to free up space, change in blank. And so as we leave you for some time to reflect, and if you're watching, you'll get to see some other stuff up on the screen. But as you spend some time reflecting, I want you to think about what thing or things in your life and leadership need to change now so that you can experiment in the future.
That's really helpful. We have to have clarity before we can take courage. We have to have awareness before we can take appropriate action. Now, you can take all kinds of actions, and we often do in our insecurity and in our anxiety and fear. We usually just do stuff. Leaders, when we don't know what to do, we usually just do something. But what we want you to do is take appropriate action. And so that first question is going to set us up of what needs to change. That's really, really important. One of those things for me that was an experiment was my schedule. And my schedule now shifts, I would say about every 6 months, I make a pretty major change to my schedule. Maybe I have a large consulting gig that I just can't fit within the week. Maybe I have some extra space. I've talked about in the past, I was pretty exhausted by a season in our life and our family. I write about it here in the book. And I had to shift and I had to experiment and go back to fully off on Fridays, no screens, no coaching, no work, so that I could replenish. But when a new season comes up, I have an exciting new opportunity, but then I need to say no to whether it's rest or space or more family time. Again, a micro change that produces a micro loss that we need to be able to name that first before we can then go experiment. Well, the experiment for me was my schedule with my family. It requires all kinds of things of us, and my kids are doing all kinds of activities in this season. My wife runs a foster care agency and is very, very involved there. And so what that looks like for me is needing to adapt and adjust to the season, whether it's summer or school time, my kids' activities, those kind of things. And so to view that as an experiment, to go, I don't need to nail this. I just need to make sure that this experiment is maybe in the right direction. So we just kind of want to move you toward progress instead of perfect. As you think about an experiment here, it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, if you aim at perfect, you probably won't start. So, Jonathan, what direction are we going to move for this next question?
Well, we found some clarity and understanding some areas in your life and leadership that need to change. Now, the flip side of that is what small steps are you going to take to implement, to shift the needle, to gain momentum, to get unstuck? And that comes with experimenting. And I want you to spend some time thinking now on what are some small experiments you could take right now so that you can shift that needle as we approach a new season of life and leadership.
So we started with what has to change. And sometimes you create that change. Sometimes it's happening for you. If your kid is starting middle school or high school, then something is changing for you. If your leadership season just changed, they added somebody to the team, you don't have a choice. In that, other things we do have a choice, and we can move proactively within that. But I just want to remind you that however you get to change, however you get to that experiment, there's no one better way or best way to get there. We find ourselves in the midst of so much cultural change right now and economic change. Again, it's all around us. Friend, I want to encourage you to be proactive. That's why we have the Right Side Up Journal. That's why I take the steps each morning to be able to control the things that I can control. And so as we leave you here, I just want to leave you with the 3 buckets analogy, that there are 3 buckets. And for me, I see these 3 buckets as a person of faith. I believe there are certain things in life and in the world that just God is responsible for, and to leave those things in God's bucket. For me, there are things that I am responsible for that are in my purview that I can actually make a move on that day and that week. Nobody else is going to care for my family and going to treat my time in the way and exercise my body in the way that needs to be done and push the limits and encourage my team. That's for me to do. But then there's the 3rd bucket, which is everybody else's bucket. And this is where I see so many leaders getting tied up. You may not have energy to make changes that you want to make and try experiments that you want to experiment with because you're trying to control things that are somebody else's. And so as we leave you, we just want to say, you're not going to have the energy to be able to do this. This return on energy within change, it's exhausting, and you need space for experiments. Friends, not only replenish in the midst of that, but make sure that you're not trying to control what is God's to control or what is somebody else's to control. So Jonathan, lead us out of this episode, my man.
Yeah, we hope you have found some nuggets of truth. Again, if you're just tuning in, click right up in this box somewhere. You can watch any of the past episodes. Go back and listen to them. They're short, they're practical. They're designed to help you grow and find a lighter way to live and lead. Always be sure to subscribe wherever you listen or watch podcasts, especially over on YouTube. And we will see you right back here next week for part 5 of our summer series on Anti-Burnout, a lighter way to live and lead. See you on the next episode.